have lines in the road. You have, and like I'm like I, and they're just like, we'll just go.
I think as long as I have one of those cats. I have to be so careful. Well, Diana Thomas has posted last night that they still don't have power last night. They said they power they might get it back. I have a little skirt that does that. I can, yeah. I mean, I don't wear it.
You don't sit very much during the day.
No, no, but that's the problem. Oh, say, can you see? Can you hear me? Well, I can. Clearly should ask for money back.
Statute of limitations is up on that, though. And I'm getting it back.
You want to try it? No. I cut my dinner short.
You won't be able to say adjourn anymore.
So we good to start, you think?
Jared, did you want me to record it on here, or are we all set? I don't have to record it on the Zoom, do I? Okay. Okay, perfect. Are you ready for us to begin? Okay. This is recording, that's recording. Huh? You can. Okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:13, and we will start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will start with introduction of board members. We'll start, Cam.
Cameron Walters, Kingfield.
Serena Howard, Strong.
Lois Parker from Strong.
Kim Jordan, Kingfield.
Julie Talmadge, Kingfield.
Jessica Kane Phillips. Thank you. And then we'll do introduction of administrators. Jeffrey?
Lynn Carey, Business Manager.
Todd Sanders, Superintendent.
Great, thank you. And then we have the initial budget overview presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And first of all, thank you, Jared. We're obviously trying new streaming equipment today. It was like a road crew setting up for a concert here earlier. Administrators chimed in to help and get it set up, so thank you for them. As with anything new, this is our test run, but we will be trying to do this moving forward and try to live stream all of our meetings, budget and board meetings from this point forward. So we'll learn from our mistakes that inevitably before I make tonight. But thank you, Jared, for getting that set up and running. What I'm going to do today is share with you a PowerPoint presentation that overviews where we stand with our current budget as far as the budget itself, as far as the ED 279, which is our state subsidy. I would ask that as you go through, I'll also have a copy of this for you after this, but I figured when we do first go through it now, it's probably best to do it all together on one slide at a time. I'll have the binders for you when you leave, but if you just want to make notes as we go through, hopefully any questions that that get generated at the beginning of the presentation will then be answered as I go through the presentation. If you have questions, we'll answer them at the end. If there are questions that I can't answer or Lynn can't answer at this, or other administrators can't answer at this moment, I will make a note and we will get answers to you. All right, so here we go. Our initial budget presentation, and this is initial. We have started to look at things, but as it is right now, this is everything as it currently exists. Admin team meets twice a week to review the budget and to make changes as necessary. So our current budget, and you'll look, this is familiar to most of you who have been on the board through the budget process. These are the cost centers that we identify the expenses in. And you'll see if you go to the bottom right in green, that is the actual percentage that the budget is up. In a normal year, for this to be our starting point at 3.393%, we'd be pretty happy. Just because that number is about, you try to shoot for that around that 3%, and then if you have to make tweaks to it, it's a little easier. But you can see that as often happens, vast majority of those cost centers go up every year. And the percentage to the right is the change that cost center has increased. If it's in red, it's decreased by that percentage or that amount of money. Budget comparisons, just so you can see I went back 5 years on these, so you can see what the trend has been here in the district. You can see in 17-18, we had the increase of $181,000 and some change, well, in $603, which was a 1.976% increase, and then you follow it through up to this current year. Required local contribution, that's what the towns have to come up with or the district has to come up with to get the subsidy from the state. If you don't meet the required local contribution, then the state will not give you the subsidy that they calculate you should get. So you can see what's happened here. Local contribution, it goes up and it goes down. This year, looking at this number, you'd say, well, that's not too bad. It's only up $3,746 and a penny. Additional local contribution. This one will make you do a double take. You can see that we've gone, and again, it fluctuates from year to year depending on what the state subsidy is. And you can see last year we were able to bring it down $317. That's not a typo at the top line. You see that the additional local contribution, as the budget is right now, would be $1.4 million. You're probably wondering why. This is a big contributing factor why. This is what has happened to our state subsidy. So you can see in 17-18, the district received $385,112.62 from the state. It goes up, it goes down, depending on a variety of things that calculate into the formula. And this year, the state has come in with a decrease of support to the district at about $500,000. Why? Well, first, the impact. So if the board today, or when we start doing our process, says, oh, we're happy with the budget the way it is, these would be a percent impact to the individual towns. And Lynn is big at saying the percent is not the percent. So a percentage one year, it's not the same dollar figure every year. So you can't just look at the percentage. But if we were to pass on the budget with the additional cost being absorbed, the additional local expense being absorbed, you would be asking the town of Avon to go from $542,000 and $9 to $725,000. That's an increase of 33.89%. Same boat's true for all the remaining three towns. Kingfield would be up 35.92%. Phillips would be up 32.86%. Strong would be up 32.42%. So even though the budget is coming in at a 3.3% increase, as I shared, the actual cost of that increase, because of the calculation of the ED 279, is an increase to the district of a little over 34%. Hearing no one say they're okay with that, we'll move on. Why? Why are the numbers impact us so much this year? Student enrollment, they take the last two previous years of student enrollment. You know that our student enrollment in this district is declining. We saw a spike, obviously because of COVID this year, with our student enrollment. You can see the numbers right here. We went from 616 students on our books of October 1st for fiscal year 21 to 561 students. Special education numbers drop. That hurts us as well as in funding, because we get state subsidy for special ed students. That number went from 134 to 118. The homeschool is where we really saw an impact. We went from 22 homeschool students to 66 homeschool students. And private schools stayed consistent. We didn't have any students go to private school. So that is a big contributing factor to the decrease in state subsidy. That and the fact that we are already over the state ratio, as you know, because of our small class sizes in our community schools. We already get dinged because we fall below the ratio that the state says we should be at. This just impacts that more significantly. People love coming to this area, I guess, because if you look at what has happened to our property valuations, in 2016, the valuation of the district actually dropped $2.2 million, which indicates to the state the district needs more students. It came up a modest $950,000 the following year. 19, it actually stayed, it didn't change at all. The number at that, 29,600,000. Along came COVID, and the property valuation of the district went up $25.7 million. That tells is capable of looking at more of the cost of education. Looking forward, what we always want to do is look forward at these numbers. We're still looking at an $8.5 million increase. So, and you can see where the biggest jump was. Obviously, Kingfield. Kingfield went from a $120 million valuation to a $141 million valuation. I've heard people purchasing homes for twice the asking price, and that's just a number that the state uses. We really got hit with a perfect storm this year. Additional, when we don't get these, we lose money. Transportation service, we lost money. We used to transport kids from Rangeley down to Foster Tech. Not a big amount of money, but still revenue nonetheless. That revenue we lost because of COVID. Rangeley decided to transport their own students, and they have indicated to me they're going to continue to do so moving forward. So that's revenue lost. We lost money from busing students from the EUTs. Special education, we lost money. We were able to bill main care. Special ed services lost money, our regular tuition. So there was loss in 3 significant areas: revenues, student enrollment, and property valuation. If the board, which in previous years, boards have directed the administrative team to come up with a percentage that they thought was a palatable increase to the taxpayers. And I'm talking the local expense right now, not the overall budget cost. If the board was to direct the administrative team to get down to an 18 to 21% increase, still a significant increase, that's $600,000 that we would have to cut from the budget. Keep in mind, the budget, as it currently stands right now, is only, I say only, but it's a $10.3 million budget. With the increase, it goes up to about 10.7. So you're talking about a big chunk of change from a budget that's not extremely big. To get to $700,000, or to $700,000 would get us to the 15 to 19% range. $900,000 brings us to 11 to 14%. $1 million gets you down to 9 to about 12%. There is some hope, though. There is some hope. First is our ESSA monies. These are our title monies: Title I, Title II, Title IV, and Title V. These are funds that are federal funds that we can pay for staffing, we can pay for services out of these funds. Anything that gets paid with a federal fund does not show up on your ED 279, so you don't get dinged for those staff. So if we have staff positions that we can move into federal funds, we don't lose the position, but it comes out of the local budget and it comes out of the formula for the ED 279. Our goal is to try to get that ED 279 where we need it to be to get the support that we need. Do we anticipate students' enrollment climbing back up? We do. I think once we get beyond this, I believe we will get students back. Will our state subsidy go up? I believe it will. I'm a little concerned about that $8 million property valuation increase still. That will ding us. But I see those numbers coming back up. I know Lorraine already spoke with me earlier. Our special ed numbers are already back up. A lot of those, and Lorraine, tell me if I'm misspeaking, just let me know, but we weren't able to identify a lot of special ed students last spring because we weren't able to do testing because of COVID.
Right, we had kids in referral,
Yeah.
and there was no, you can't, the tests aren't normal to do online, so we had to wait, and we had to do them all in September and October and November.
So anything after October 1st, even though we knew we had these students waiting in the wings, October 1st is the deadline. That's the time that you have to submit your enrollment to the state. It can't change after that. So we know we've got student increase in our student population. So we're looking at these funds. Not a significant amount of money, but there's money there. Can we better utilize the money in our title grants? There has been an awful lot of monetary support for schools during COVID. As you look at this, you would say, oh, that's pretty much absorb it all right there. The unfortunate thing is, with each one of these grants, the rules changed a little bit. When they first initially came out, you could supplement, you could not supplant. So that means we could not just take a teacher and move them out of one line and put it into this bucket, because that's supplementing. I mean, that's supplanting. That's taking out of your local budget. You can support your local budget, but you can't replace items in it. As each of these grants has come out, that has loosened a little bit, to the point where ESSER 2 has the ability to supplant. When you look at this, you may say, well, where's the money gone? Or why is it available? CRF 1 and CRF 2 were the first two that came out. If you remember, when I was talking to you about those at board meetings, those monies had to be spent by the end of December. And you had to have things purchased, you had to have things on site, or you ran the risk of losing the money. That timeline was unrealistic. We couldn't do it. So even though we put things into the application to spend the entire amount of money, you see to the right that there's money available there, because we just weren't able to spend it. And we were told, if you don't spend it, you're going to lose it. And in essence, it was taken away from us at one point. The rules then changed again. And they said, well, you can have the money back that you didn't spend, and we'll extend the timeline. So with those two lines, we have to spend that money by the end of June. Correct, Lynn? By the end of June. So we will now look at, the administrative team will now look at what are some things that we need for next year's budget that we might be able to purchase with this money this year before the end of June. It's still a timeline. It's still a tight timeline, but it's a window of hope, if you will. So we have those two amounts of money that we need to look at. It's not easy. I have to go in and completely resubmit an application. We have to do it already for CRF 1 because there were some things that the state has said we didn't code the way we should have, so we have to do it anyways. But those are two of the grants that we have for the remainder of this year and the money left available in them. ESSER 1 has about $65,000 in it. That extends through next year. So we have next year to use that money. If you remember, when we initially did the ESSER, that was where we put our additional nurses, our COVID support staff, and our extra custodial hours. Right now, we can just leave that sitting there because now that it overlaps into next year, we can tap into that to keep those positions in place. And again, the extra time, the positions are not showing up on our ED 279 because it's through a federal grant. ESSER 2 we have not applied for yet. And the reason we've not applied for it yet is because of the situation we're in right now. We wanted to get guidance from the board as far as how to utilize those funds. We already have an idea how to utilize them. Now, you may say $757,000 is a lot of money. It actually goes pretty quick when you start talking about big ticket items like the roof at Kingfield and tech equipment and things of that nature, school buses. So it does go pretty quick. Those alone will not be enough to absorb the impact that we have. The monies that you see right there under the available column, that's not enough to absorb the impact that we have. We'd still be looking at needing to do make some tough decisions here in the district. However, I believe the vote was today, there is an American Rescue Plan proposed to come out through the Biden administration, also known as ESSER 3. The grade ranges are pre-K to 12. The focus is reopening schools safely. And you may understand, or you may have heard the president say, we need to get kids back in school. There are some states and districts where kids have just been out of school since last March. And I try to emphasize how good a job the teachers, the administrators, the board in this district have done. Our kids have actually had in-person instruction and been able to participate in things like athletics that even within our own region and within the state have not been able to. So when you hear him say reopening schools, he's really talking about those districts that haven't been able to do the things we have. But, that being said, we will still be getting a healthy amount of money. 20% of that money needs to be addressed learning loss. The other thing, permissible use, this in essence is supplanting. And it's saying in the grant that you can supplant. This is saying to prevent layoffs and address budget deficits, which is what we're looking at. You don't get to $1.4 million in a district of this size without positions. It's the only way to get to that amount of money. Do we want to do that? No. Is it in the best interest of our students coming out of a pandemic? It certainly is not. This would allow us to absorb that.
What is supplanting?
You can take it right out of your local and just put it into this.
Pay for things that are already in the budget.
You can pay for things that are already in the budget. Supplementing is being able to provide additional services to what you already are doing. So supplanting is allowed in this. Maine is estimated to get $390 million. The guidance we've been given is it will be about double the amount in your ESSER 2 fund. If that is the case, 58, until I hear it for certain, I'm cautious, but if that is the case, then 58 will get $1.4 million. That money we have through next year and the following year to spend.
Through 23.
Correct. Yep.
And when did they tell you that? When?
Well, the vote's today. I believe the vote was in the today, and we'll know after, I believe after today. It's not I don't believe it's the education piece that's holding it up. I think there are some other things in the bill that are causing concern in some circles. We'll move on. So that is, I guess I can pull back to this slide for a minute. So is it a bad situation? It's a very bad, we're in a bad situation, there's no doubt about it. It could be a heck of a lot worse if we didn't have these funds available. So what I would like the permission from the board is for the admin team to now go back, knowing, and as soon as we get confirmation about this other money, to look at what can we do as far as reorganizing what gets paid out of what to absorb the cost to the impact to the taxpayers for this year's budget. That's what I would like. We're scheduled to meet, I think our next, and we are probably going to have these red meetings, is the 16th. That would give us two meetings next week, and we meet tomorrow as well, to begin the process. We've already started the process, obviously, of moving things out of the local budget. That's what we need to do. We need to remove things out of our local budget. The one caution, and I know desperate times call for desperate measures, but the one caution that I give is we just need to be careful about the future. Because if we move a whole bunch of positions into federal money that exists now, and that federal money goes away, and it will, and those positions are still necessary, then you set yourself up for a cliff. You set yourself up for a big, big budget spike. And it's that whole kicking the can down the road thing. Do I think we need to do some creative stuff this year? I do. Yeah, leave it at that. But we have some ideas. We're looking at that addressing learning loss. We may actually have to bring in, it sounds like we're doing it backwards, but we may actually have to bring in additional teachers to pick up on that learning loss. Obviously, those would be listed as a one-year type position, so that they would not be in the budget moving forward. But the other thing is the strategic plan. And I haven't shared that with the board yet because I want to give you it in increments. I didn't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of stuff, but I will be sending that out tomorrow electronically to the board. The NESDEC will be doing a presentation for us at the board meeting next Thursday as far as the research. If you remember, we paid $18,000 to have them do a plan for us and come up with options for the district. So I will give, as I said, I will share that with you. They will be doing a presentation for us next week. When we first heard this news, we immediately thought, oh, do we have to start looking at reconfiguring the district now so we can address the ratios? I don't think that's necessary right now. You want to roll something like this out in a proper manner, and you want to give all the stakeholders an opportunity for their voices to be heard. So that's what phase 2 of the rollout is. We had planned on doing that next year. We have a gentleman who's going to do half dozen community forums so that people will be able to hear what's being proposed. They'll be able to give feedback. But this is something, as you design budgets, you're always actually trying to design two years down the road. So this is something the board needs to be aware of as an option to, in some way, absorb some of those additional expenses that may be down the road. It's not easy discussion. It's not things people want to hear, but it's necessary unless you want to pass on large increases in budget to taxpayers. So I will be sharing that with you. I would ask you all to look that over before next Thursday if you have any questions about that for them, because they will be presenting it to us. But I'll go back to this now. Does anybody have, I hope that was clear. I hope I was able to lay out why we're in the situation that we're in. It's not that anybody did anything wrong. It's just this was a very desirable location as far as people buying property, and it was not such a desirable location for students coming to school in some cases. So that's why we're where we are. Do we have some plans, some ideas? We do. We certainly have already been talking. So I guess I would ask if the board would be willing to allow the admin team to dive into these funds to craft a budget for you. That's what we will work on over the next couple weeks.
Can you clarify what diving into the budget to look at the funds means?
We're looking at teaching positions that we can pull out and put into this grant. Teaching positions that if the district reconfigures down the road may not be necessary. We have, in one of our buildings, we have a class size of 6 with the teacher. And we know that that's tough to maintain. But what we will do is get our ratios where the state says they should be, which should help us with our revenue moving forward. I think we'll be in a better place. Lynn, I'm looking to you. I think we will be in a better place next year with our ED 279. I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but I don't think we would see another impact like we're seeing this year. So, yeah, what I would like is on that 16th for us to present to you a budget with items having been removed from the local budget. And keeping in mind, we'll remove ones that are one-time costs, or they're not reoccurring costs, have to pick up in future budget. I'm thinking, Scott, you can help me. Roof at King, air is another.
Just again, I'm sorry, people slower, I can't hear you.
Mike's due.
But, so when you say, bill, you said,
Yep.
paying for that with,
Correct.
whatever, that are currently already in the bill. Out of,
The local budget, correct. I mean, maintenance is always going to reoccur, but a teacher, is going to be in every fiscal year budget. So if we remove educators from this budget, they're going to reappear next year. The roof will not. The air handlers was another pretty big ticket item, wasn't it, Scott? Yep. The other thing we've talked about too are, you're aware, we just had power outages. 2 of our schools have generators that will allow students, and on days if we were in, it happened to be, there was, the next day was a Wednesday, it was remote. But even on Wednesday when there was power outages throughout the communities, all our schools have power, which means they have heat. So I'd always like to have that as an option for students to come in if they need to. But we have 2 of our buildings right now that the generators only allow for minimal functions, correct, Scott? So something like that is something we could probably address, would be a one-time cost. And we may have to prioritize. There may be things that we'd like to do that either we can't do because they don't fall into the description of what the grant allows, or even though that sounds like an awful lot of money, it will go pretty quickly. We were surprised how quickly the ESSER 2 went. We were over by, Joe, you did the former, we were over by about $1 million on ESSER 2. So, I mean, that's 700,000. So it adds up pretty quick. It sounds like an awful lot of money, but when you start throwing big ticket items in there, it goes.
but again, you're prioritizing taking things out of the.
Correct. Oh, that's, we have.
But you're gonna start working on that. Oh, well,
We already have.
Right, but even by the next time you meet, you might know for sure.
Hopefully. Yeah.
those funds there or not.
Yep. If those funds aren't there, we have some very, very difficult decisions.
Then it's gonna be difficult.
Then it's a whole different discussion.
And hopefully they know that by Thursday.
If they vote tonight, if they haven't already. Anybody have any questions about what I've shared? Or suggestions? We're open. Anybody has any big ideas?
Get, when you have community meetings, you'll hire, just will you know how many? And it'll be only like for a year?
Yeah. Yeah, what we're looking at is probably those multi-grade levels that were created a year or so ago, 2 years ago, whenever they were created. Probably bring back a teacher at each grade level to address the learning gaps, but knowing that we'll be going back to multi-grade level teams the following year. Counselors is a big one, but you are aware, we post for vacancies, we just can't fill them. But in the ESER 3, support services for staff and students, counseling support services for staff and students is an emphasis as well. So we could certainly bring in additional counselors. We're looking at obviously keeping our nurses 4 days a week next year. The support staff, that one individual in each building, the COVID support has been very useful to staff and to the administration in the building. So we're looking at keeping that and keeping the additional hours of Scott's crew for the cleaning purposes. So those are all things we'd like to continue next year that we brought in this year. Administrators, anything that I've left out or didn't address? It's not going to be easy work. It's hard work, but like I said, we're fortunate with the additional funding this year.
Well, it's hard because right now you don't know what direction you're
We
heading.
don't. We actually have to plan we have to have two different courses of action.
Right.
One with and one without. The with is much easier.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions?
So if I go back to that timeline, then we will, 16th, when we will share with you an initial revision, knowing that we probably have to meet the 16th and the 18th of that week.
And the 18th?
Yeah.
Which is
Most of these meetings that I have up on the screen, with what we're looking at doing, I'm assuming we probably will have to have. I'd rather tell you to book them in right now and then be able to go back to you and say take them out. Because if you look when we try to finalize the fiscal 20-year budget, that's April 1st. It's already the first week of March. So
Is that in the package that we're gonna get?
you'll get this whole presentation I just shared with you. Yeah. Everything else.
So is the strategic plan in the packet?
The strategic plan is not in the packet. I'm going to send that out. I have about 7 hard copies for those of you who like hard copies of things. And I will send it. And I will send it electronically as well. So those of you who would like a hard copy tonight, like I said, I only have 7 of them, but there are 7 here. I will send out the electronic version.
Isn't this the same one you passed out last meeting?
Yes.
This schedule here?
Yes. Yep.
Could I just ask, is there a timeline on the strategic plan?
That's up to the board. And
Yeah,
as far as
I understand.
when you roll it out. My vision of what it would be that you get all the information this year. You spend some good amount of time debating. There are 4 options, and I will tell you that several of them include closing the schools. And that's a 3-year process, right? Or it's a 2-year process. It's not something you can do in 1 year. So what I would ask the board to do is take what time they need this year to narrow it down to at least 2 options that they feel they would like to pursue, or maybe the board can come up and say this is the only option that appeals to us. And then I will have Craig Freshley, the gentleman that will be working with us on phase 2. He already has the plan. We will then set up meetings with the board. We'll set up meetings in the local communities so that anyone who wants to have a voice can have a voice.
it keep all schools open and just reconfigure students in schools, we can do it without,
That's their first option.
that's it, right? And then, but if it does require a closing of school, then,
I don't see that. To get to where we need to get in the ED 279, I don't see closing a school. They give you the biggest bang for your buck, is what they're saying, based on student enrollment projections, based on, I mean, we're talking about stuff you haven't seen yet, so it's kind of hard to probably follow along what I'm saying, but they give you 4 options. They give you pros and cons of all the options. What that reconfiguration type thing, be it within buildings or, school closures, and please, anybody that's watching, we're not talking about closing the school right now, but it just shows you what the impact is. And what that does is it allows you to increase your class sizes, which allows you to reduce the student-teacher ratio. I mean, bring the student-teacher ratio to where it needs to be. You could have a building where you could have 2 first-grade classes or, 1 middle school.
so if it was to reconfigure, students in schools, that could potentially start as soon as next year if needed.
That was the initial discussion, the admin we had when we didn't know if we were about that additional 1.4 million. That's the only way we would have been able to get to that number probably. If anybody has any questions, you just want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me anytime. Like I said, I'll share the PowerPoint with you. We didn't give you the full, because we're going to change it so much, we did not give you the actual breakdown of each individual cost center yet, because it's going to be completely different in a week or so. So that's not in there, but you do have, thank you, Lynn. Lynn has passed out the binders to you, so you will see the initial PowerPoint of this presentation. It's also, Jared, we recorded this, so people will be able to watch it there, and we can put this on the website as well.
Okay, thank you, Todd.
Thank you. And thank you, administrators, because they worked
Yep.
hard to.
Thank you, guys. We continue to thank you.
Todd, do we need a motion?
Jesse wants to probably, so.
No, I mean,
Me?
Oh, no,
For the
this is just a workshop session, so it's not but we probably should have a motion to. Talk into your mic, Jesse.
I'll second it. 6:49.
On time, what? Yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody. Jared, how are the volume levels and stuff like that, the voices? Could you hear them?